The October rain hammered against the tall windows of the federal courthouse in downtown Portland, Oregon, creating a rhythmic percussion that echoed through the empty hallways. Judge Sarah Mitchell stood alone in her chambers on the 14th floor, staring at the city lights blurred by the downpour. It was 11:47 p.m., and she should have been home hours ago. But the Henderson case kept her awake, drowning in case files and legal precedents that seemed to lead nowhere. Sarah was 42 years old, with sharp features softened only by the worry lines that had deepened over the past year. Her dark hair, usually pulled back in a professional bun, now fell loosely around her shoulders. She wore her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the documents spread across her mahogany desk. The Henderson case involved a pharmaceutical company accused of manipulating clinical trials, resulting in dozens of deaths. It was the kind of case that made headlines, the kind that could define a career or end it. She reached for her coffee mug, finding it empty and cold. The digital clock on her desk blinked to 11:48 p.m. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes and allowed herself a moment of weakness, thinking about Emma. Her 16-year-old daughter had been distant lately, typical teenage rebellion mixed with something else Sarah couldn't quite identify. Emma had inherited her father's blue eyes and stubborn determination, traits that both worried and impressed Sarah. Tomorrow, Emma's high school was organizing a field trip to Ironwood State Penitentiary as part of their criminal justice program. Sarah had signed the permission slip reluctantly, remembering her own similar visit decades ago when she was considering law school. The irony wasn't lost on her that her daughter might be inspired by the same experience that had shaped her own career path. Her cell phone buzzed on the desk, breaking her concentration. A text message from Emma. "Still up working? Don't forget I'm leaving early tomorrow for the prison tour. Love you, Mom." Sarah smiled and typed back, "Be careful tomorrow. Stay with your group. Love you more." She gathered her files, finally accepting that she'd made no progress tonight. The rain had intensified, now accompanied by distant thunder rolling across the Willamette River. As she packed her briefcase, her phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown number. Sarah hesitated, then answered. "Judge Mitchell speaking." Silence, then heavy breathing. "Hello? Who is this?" A distorted voice, clearly using a modulator, responded. "Judge Mitchell, we need to talk about the Henderson case." Sarah's stomach tightened. "This line is for official court business only. If you're a party to the Henderson case, you need to contact me through proper legal channels." "This isn't about legal channels, Your Honor." The voice was mechanical, gender-neutral, menacing. "This is about your daughter Emma, beautiful girl, 16 years old, attends Lincoln High School. Tomorrow she's visiting Ironwood State Penitentiary." Sarah's blood ran cold. Her hand trembled as she gripped the phone tighter. "Who the hell is this? How do you know?" "Listen very carefully. In exactly 12 hours, Emma will enter Ironwood. Something is going to happen during that visit. Something that will change everything for you and your daughter. You have a choice to make, Judge Mitchell." "What choice? What are you talking about?" "The Henderson case. You're going to dismiss all charges. You're going to rule that the evidence was obtained illegally and throw out the entire prosecution. You have until noon tomorrow to file the dismissal." Sarah's legal mind kicked into overdrive despite her rising panic. "That's insane. I can't just dismiss a federal case without cause. There are procedures, appeals processes. Then Emma dies." The words hit her like a physical blow. Sarah grabbed the edge of her desk to steady herself. "You're threatening my daughter? Do you have any idea what you're—" "We're not threatening, Judge Mitchell. We're informing you of consequences. Dismiss the Henderson case by noon tomorrow, or Emma never leaves Ironwood alive. Don't call the police, don't call the FBI, don't tell anyone. We have people everywhere, including inside your precious courthouse. One wrong move, and Emma disappears." "Wait, don't hang up. Let me talk to her. Let me—" The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered onto the desk. Her mind raced through impossible scenarios. This couldn't be real. It had to be a sick prank, someone trying to intimidate her. But they knew too much. They knew about Emma's school, about the prison visit, about details that weren't public information. She grabbed her phone and pulled up Emma's number, her fingers shaking. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Emma, honey, call me back immediately. It's important. Please, as soon as you get this." Sarah paced her chambers, trying to think clearly through the fog of terror. She was a federal judge, trained to remain calm under pressure, to analyze situations logically. But this wasn't a courtroom. This was her daughter's life. Could she dismiss the Henderson case? Technically, yes. Judges had broad discretion, but it would be immediately suspicious. The evidence in the case was solid, obtained through proper warrants and legal procedures. A dismissal would trigger an investigation, appeals, possibly her removal from the bench. Her career would be over. But Emma's life. Sarah picked up her desk phone, her finger hovering over the numbers for the FBI field office. The caller's warning echoed in her mind. We have people everywhere. If they truly had infiltrated law enforcement, making a call could trigger whatever they had planned. She set the phone down. She needed to think. She needed time. But time was exactly what she didn't have. The rain continued its assault on the windows as Sarah grabbed her briefcase and coat. She had to get home, had to see Emma, had to figure out if this threat was real or an elaborate bluff. As she rushed toward the elevator, her phone buzzed again. Another text from an unknown number. "We're watching. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow changes everything." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the message. She looked around the empty hallway, suddenly aware of how alone she was, how vulnerable. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows. Every corner seemed to hide a threat. The elevator ride down felt eternal. When the doors finally opened to the underground parking garage, Sarah hesitated. Her Mercedes was parked in her reserved spot near the elevator, under the bright security lights. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. She hurried to her car, checking the back seat before getting in, something she'd never done before. The drive home through the rain-soaked streets was a blur. Every car behind her seemed suspicious. Every pedestrian could be watching her. Sarah lived in the West Hills, an affluent neighborhood overlooking the city. The house she'd bought after her divorce 5 years ago was more than she needed, but it had been important to give Emma stability. A place that felt safe and permanent. Now, as she pulled into the driveway, even home didn't feel safe. The lights were off. Emma was asleep. Sarah let herself in quietly and climbed the stairs to Emma's room. She pushed open the door gently and saw her daughter curled up under her blankets, breathing peacefully. Sarah stood in the doorway watching Emma sleep, fighting back tears. How could she protect her? How could she stop something she didn't understand? Sarah retreated to her own bedroom, but knew sleep was impossible. She sat on the edge of her bed, still in her work clothes, staring at her phone. At 3:17 a.m., she finally made a decision. She couldn't dismiss the case without understanding who was behind this threat and what they really wanted. She needed information. She opened her laptop and began researching Ironwood State Penitentiary. The maximum security facility housed Oregon's most dangerous criminals, including death row inmates. Security was supposedly impenetrable. How could anyone plan a kidnapping inside a state prison during a supervised school tour, unless they had help from inside? Sarah's search led her down a rabbit hole of information about Ironwood. Recent news articles mentioned budget cuts, staff shortages, allegations of corruption among guards. 3 months ago, a whistleblower had claimed that some correctional officers were smuggling contraband for inmates. The investigation was ongoing, but no charges had been filed yet. She pulled up the roster of inmates on death row. There were currently 12 men awaiting execution. Her eyes stopped on one name, Daniel Cross. Scheduled for execution in 72 hours, convicted of murdering federal agent Marcus Thompson during a drug raid gone wrong. Sarah clicked on the case file. Daniel Cross had been a DEA agent himself, working deep undercover in a major trafficking operation. According to the prosecution, he'd switched sides, betrayed his partner, and executed him in cold blood. The evidence had been overwhelming. Cross's gun, his fingerprints, his DNA at the scene. An open and shut case. But something about it nagged at Sarah. She'd seen hundreds of criminal cases, and something about the cross-conviction felt off. Too clean. Too perfect. Dawn was breaking when Sarah finally closed her laptop. She had 4 hours before Emma would leave for Ironwood. 4 hours to decide whether to let her daughter walk into what might be a trap, or to stop her and potentially trigger whatever the caller had planned. She checked on Emma one more time. Her daughter was awake now, getting ready for school. When Emma saw her mother in the doorway, she smiled. "Mom, you're up early. Or did you ever go to sleep?" Sarah forced herself to smile back. "Couldn't sleep. Big day today." "Yeah, the prison tour. Should be interesting, right? My criminal justice teacher says it'll really open our eyes to the reality of the system." Sarah wanted to grab Emma, to hold her tight and never let go, to tell her she couldn't go on this trip, but she couldn't explain why without revealing the threat, and she had no idea who might be listening, watching, waiting. "Emma," Sarah said carefully, "you need to promise me something. Stay with your group today, don't wander off, don't talk to any inmates alone, and keep your phone on. If anything at all feels wrong, you call me immediately." Emma laughed. "Mom, it's a supervised school trip to a prison. What could possibly go wrong? They have like 1,000,000 security protocols." Sarah couldn't answer that question. At 7:30 a.m., Sarah watched Emma's school bus pull away from the house. Her daughter waved from the window, excited and oblivious to the danger. Sarah stood in her driveway long after the bus disappeared, her phone clutched in her hand, waiting for it to ring with demands, threats, or worse. The clock was ticking. Emma would arrive at Ironwood State Penitentiary in approximately 90 minutes. And Sarah Mitchell had no idea how to save her. The yellow school bus carrying 23 Lincoln High School students rolled through the gates of Ironwood State Penitentiary at exactly 9:47 a.m. Emma Mitchell pressed her face against the window, watching as the massive concrete walls rose around them like the jaws of some enormous beast. The facility sprawled across 40 acres of flat Oregon terrain, surrounded by 3 layers of electrified fencing topped with razor wire that glinted in the weak autumn sunlight. "This place is insane," whispered Jake Morrison, Emma's classmate sitting beside her. He was the class clown, but even his usual bravado had faded as they approached the prison. "Did you see those guard towers? They've got guys with actual rifles up there." Emma nodded, feeling a strange mixture of fascination and unease. She'd told her mother she was excited about this trip, and part of her genuinely was. But something about the way her mom had acted this morning had been off. Sarah Mitchell was always protective, but today she'd seemed almost frightened, desperate even. Emma had noticed the dark circles under her mother's eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly when she hugged Emma goodbye. The bus jerked to a stop at the main security checkpoint. A correctional officer in a crisp gray uniform boarded, his face weathered and expression stern. His name tag read, "Officer Reynolds." "Good morning, students," Reynolds announced in a voice that suggested he'd given this speech 1,000 times. "Welcome to Ironwood State Penitentiary. Before we proceed, I need to establish ground rules. Rule 1. Stay with your group at all times. Rule 2. Do not speak to any inmate unless explicitly instructed to do so. Rule 3. Do not touch anything, accept anything, or pass anything to anyone inside this facility. Rule 4. If you hear an alarm, follow my instructions immediately without question. Is that understood?" A chorus of "Yes, sir" rippled through the bus. "Your phones will remain on the bus. You'll get them back when the tour concludes. Any questions?" Emma's hand shot up. "Why can't we keep our phones?" Reynolds fixed her with a cold stare. "Security protocol, miss. Inmates have been known to use unauthorized phones to coordinate criminal activity. We can't risk any device being compromised. Now, please deposit all phones in this collection bag." As Emma reluctantly handed over her phone, she thought again about her mother's warnings. "Keep your phone on. If anything feels wrong, call me immediately." Now she couldn't even do that. The group filed off the bus and through a series of security checkpoints, metal detectors, X-ray scanners, pat-downs by stone-faced guards. The process took nearly 30 minutes. Emma noticed how the facility seemed to operate on a different sense of time, everything moving with deliberate mechanical precision. Their guide for the tour was Deputy Warden Patricia Holloway. a tall black woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She wore a dark blazer over her uniform and carried herself with the authority of someone who had spent decades in the correctional system. "Good morning, students. I'm Deputy Warden Holloway. Over the next 2 hours, you'll see various aspects of our facility, including the cell blocks, the cafeteria, the recreation yard, and our educational programs. Ironwood houses 847 inmates, ranging from minimum to maximum security. We also maintain Oregon's death row and execution chamber." A murmur went through the group. Emma felt her stomach tighten. "Death row?" asked Melissa Chen, one of Emma's friends. "Are we going to see that?" Holloway's expression remained neutral. "Death row is part of our tour, yes. It's important for you to understand the full scope of the criminal justice system, including its most severe consequences." They entered the main facility through a series of heavy steel doors, each requiring 2 officers to operate. The interior was exactly as Emma had imagined a prison would be. Harsh fluorescent lighting, concrete walls painted institutional beige, the constant echo of metal clanging against metal. But what struck her most was the smell, a mixture of industrial cleaner, sweat, and something else she couldn't quite identify. Desperation, maybe, or despair. The tour progressed through the general population area. Inmates watched them from behind plexiglass barriers, some with curiosity, others with hostility. Emma tried not to make eye contact, remembering Officer Reynolds's warnings. Their criminal justice teacher, Mr. Patterson, provided commentary about recidivism rates and rehabilitation programs, but Emma found it hard to concentrate. Something felt wrong. She couldn't put her finger on it, but a growing sense of unease settled in her chest. At 10:23 a.m., as they were transitioning from the cafeteria to the educational wing, Emma noticed something odd. 2 guards were having an intense whispered conversation near a service entrance. One of them kept glancing at the student group, his hand resting on his radio. When he noticed Emma watching, he quickly turned away. "Stay close," Melissa whispered, grabbing Emma's arm. "This place gives me the creeps." They moved into a corridor that seemed older than the rest of the facility. The paint was more faded here, the lighting dimmer. Deputy Warden Holloway explained that this section housed the administrative segregation unit and, beyond that, death row. Death row at Ironwood consists of 12 cells, Holloway continued as they walked. Currently, all 12 are occupied. The inmates here are separated from the general population and receive 1 hour of recreation time per day. An alarm suddenly pierced the air. The sound was deafening, a harsh electronic wail that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Red lights began flashing along the corridor. Deputy Warden Holloway immediately raised her hand, signaling the group to stop. "Everyone remain calm," she commanded, but Emma could hear the tension in her voice. Holloway spoke rapidly into her radio. "This is Deputy Warden Holloway. What's the situation?" Static, then a panicked voice. "Breach in Corridor 7, multiple hostiles. Officers down. This is not a drill. Lockdown protocol initiated." Emma's heart began to race. Around her, students started murmuring nervously. Mr. Patterson tried to maintain order, but even he looked frightened. "We need to move these students to a secure location," Holloway said into her radio. She turned to the group, her professional mask slipping slightly. "We're going to proceed quickly and calmly to the nearest secure room. Follow me exactly. Do not run. Do not separate from the group." But as they started to move, the corridor ahead erupted in chaos. 3 figures wearing correctional officer uniforms but with their faces covered by ski masks burst through a doorway, weapons drawn. Not standard-issue firearms, but compact submachine guns. "Everyone on the ground, now!" one of them screamed. Students dropped immediately, Emma among them, her face pressed against the cold concrete floor. She could see Holloway reaching for her sidearm, but one of the masked men was faster. He fired a single shot that hit the wall inches from the deputy warden's head. "Touch that weapon, and the next one goes through your skull," the gunman growled. Holloway slowly raised her hands. The masked men moved with military precision. 2 of them began systematically separating students, checking faces against something. Emma couldn't see what. Phones? Photos? The third kept his weapon trained on the adults. "Emma Mitchell," one of them called out. "Where is Emma Mitchell?" Emma's blood turned to ice. They knew her name. They were looking specifically for her. Her mother's terror this morning suddenly made horrifying sense. This wasn't random. This was planned. Jake Morrison, lying next to Emma, squeezed her hand. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't say anything." But one of the masked men had a tablet and was comparing faces. He walked slowly down the line of prone students, studying each one. When he reached Emma, he stopped. Found her. Rough hands grabbed Emma's arms, hauling her to her feet. She wanted to scream, to fight, but fear paralyzed her. The man holding her was strong, his grip bruising her biceps. "Let her go," Mr. Patterson shouted, trying to stand. The third gunman struck him across the face with his weapon, sending the teacher crashing back to the floor, blood streaming from his nose. "Emma Mitchell," the man holding her said, his voice oddly calm through the ski mask. "Your mother has something we want. You're our insurance policy." "I don't understand," Emma managed to say, her voice shaking. "What does my mother have to do with this? She's a federal judge. She has the power to make our problems disappear. Now she'll have the motivation." They began dragging Emma down the corridor away from her classmates. Melissa was crying. Jake was shouting. Deputy Warden Holloway was being forced to her knees, another guard's gun pressed to her head. "Where are you taking me?" Emma demanded, finding her voice through the terror. "Somewhere your mother will never find you. Somewhere even the FBI can't reach. You're going to death row, sweetheart. Most secure location in this entire facility." Emma struggled, but it was useless. They moved through corridors she hadn't seen on the tour, service passages and maintenance tunnels. The sounds of the alarm grew more distant. She realized with growing horror that they were taking her deeper into the prison, away from any possible help. They emerged into a different corridor. The air here was colder, the atmosphere heavier. At the far end, Emma could see a series of heavy doors with small windows. Death row. One of the men swiped a security card. Where had he gotten that? And a door clicked open. They pushed Emma inside a small, dim space between two sets of bars. She could see cells on either side, each containing a shadowy figure. "Make yourself comfortable, princess," one of the masked men said. "You're going to be here a while, maybe permanently if your mother doesn't cooperate." "You can't do this," Emma shouted. "This is a prison. There are guards everywhere, security cameras." "We are the guards, sweetheart. And the cameras? Well, let's just say they're showing exactly what we want them to show. Your mother has until noon to dismiss the Henderson case. If she doesn't, you become another tragic casualty of a prison riot gone wrong." They turned to leave, and Emma realized she was about to be abandoned in the most dangerous part of the most dangerous prison in Oregon. "Wait, please." But they were gone, the door slamming shut with a metallic finality that echoed through the corridor. Emma stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. She'd been kidnapped, inside a state prison, by people impersonating guards. Her mother was being blackmailed, and she was trapped on death row with 12 convicted killers. "Well," a voice said from the cell to her left, "this is unexpected." Emma spun around. A man stood at the bars of his cell, watching her with intelligent gray eyes. He was in his late 30s, with dark hair graying at the temples and a lean, athletic build, despite what must have been years of incarceration. His prison uniform was clean, and he carried himself with a strange dignity. "Who are you?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daniel Cross, Cell Block D, Row 1, Number 7, scheduled for execution in approximately 69 hours. He paused, studying her carefully. "And you're Judge Sarah Mitchell's daughter, which means you're in considerably more danger than you realize." "How do you know who my mother is?" "Because I know exactly why you're here. I know about the Henderson case. I know about the conspiracy that sent me to death row. And if I'm right about what's happening, those men who just left, they're not coming back. They're going to let the real inmates here handle their problem. They're going to let us kill you and blame it on a riot." Emma's legs gave out. She slumped against the wall, sliding to the floor. "This can't be happening." "But it is happening," Daniel said, his voice steady. "Which means we have a choice. We can panic or we can survive. I'd strongly recommend survival." From the other cells, Emma could hear movement. Other inmates were waking up, realizing something unusual was happening. Voices began calling out, crude and threatening. "Fresh meat on death row," someone shouted. "How'd you manage that, little girl?" Daniel's expression hardened. "Listen to me very carefully, Emma. In about 5 minutes, they're going to open these cell doors. All of them. They're going to make this look like a system malfunction during the chaos. When that happens, every man on this row except me is going to want to hurt you. They've got nothing to lose. They're already dead men." "Then what do I do?" Emma asked, tears streaming down her face. Daniel Cross looked at her with something that might have been compassion. "You trust me, because right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a very bad ending." The lights in the corridor suddenly flickered. Somewhere an electronic lock began to disengage with a soft click. Sarah Mitchell sat in her chambers at the federal courthouse, her hands trembling as she stared at the clock on her computer screen. 10:47 a.m. 73 minutes until the deadline. 73 minutes to make an impossible decision that would either destroy her career or cost her daughter's life. Her phone rang for the 37th time that morning. She'd been counting. Each call brought a spike of adrenaline, hoping it was Emma, fearing it was the distorted voice making new demands. This time, the caller ID showed FBI Portland Field Office. Sarah's finger hovered over the answer button. The voice on the phone last night had been explicit. "Don't call the police. Don't call the FBI. We have people everywhere." But what choice did she have? Emma was trapped somewhere inside Ironwood, and Sarah was expected to simply wait and comply. She answered. "Judge Mitchell. Your Honor, this is Special Agent Lauren Hayes with the FBI. I apologize for the early contact, but we have a developing situation that requires your immediate attention." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What situation?" "There's been an incident at Ironwood State Penitentiary. Approximately 45 minutes ago, multiple alarms were triggered. We're receiving conflicting reports, but it appears there may be a hostage situation involving a school tour group. I understand your daughter Emma was part of that tour." The room spun. Sarah gripped the edge of her desk to steady herself. "What kind of hostage situation? Is Emma safe? Have you confirmed?" "We don't have detailed information yet. The prison has initiated lockdown protocol and communication from inside has been limited. But, Your Honor, there's something else. About 20 minutes ago, the warden's office received a message claiming responsibility for the incident. The message specifically mentioned your name and the Henderson case." Sarah's worst fears were confirmed. This wasn't a bluff. This was real, coordinated, and happening right now. "What did the message say?" "I can't discuss operational details over the phone. I need you to come to the field office immediately. We're establishing a command center and—" "No." The word came out harder than Sarah intended. "I can't leave my chambers. Send someone here if you need to brief me." There was a pause on the other end. "Your Honor, with all due respect, your daughter is in danger. We need you to work with us on this." "And I will work with you, Agent Hayes. But I'm not leaving this building. Send someone to me, now." Sarah hung up before Hayes could argue further. Her legal training warred with her maternal instincts. Every fiber of her being wanted to rush to Ironwood, to storm the prison herself if necessary. But the voice had been clear. We have people everywhere. If the FBI was compromised, if there were corrupt agents working with the kidnappers, showing up at their command center could trigger exactly what they'd threatened. She opened her laptop and pulled up the Henderson case file again. Martin Henderson, CEO of Prometheus Pharmaceuticals, stood accused of orchestrating a massive fraud scheme. His company had falsified clinical trial data for a cholesterol medication called cardiozine. When the drug reached market, it caused catastrophic side effects, heart attacks, strokes, organ failure. 63 people had died before the drug was pulled. The evidence against Henderson was overwhelming. Internal emails, testimony from whistleblowers, forensic accounting that traced bribes to FDA officials who'd fast-tracked approval. The trial had been national news. Henderson faced multiple life sentences. But someone wanted him free badly enough to kidnap a judge's daughter inside a maximum security prison. Sarah's office door burst open without warning. She jumped, her hand instinctively reaching for the letter opener on her desk. A ridiculous weapon, but the only one available. A man in his 50s entered wearing an expensive charcoal suit and carrying a leather briefcase. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his face tanned and confident. Sarah recognized him immediately. Thomas Brennan, one of the most powerful defense attorneys in the Pacific Northwest. He was also Martin Henderson's lead counsel. "What the hell are you doing in my chambers?" Sarah demanded. "You can't be here without—" "We need to talk, Your Honor, and we need to talk now, before this situation becomes even more catastrophic than it already is." Brennan closed the door behind him and locked it. Sarah's hand tightened on the letter opener. "Get out. Now. Or I'm calling security." "Please, just listen." Brennan raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I know about Emma. I know what's happening at Ironwood. And I know you're being given an ultimatum." "How do you know that?" Brennan set his briefcase on Sarah's desk and opened it, pulling out a tablet. "Because I represent people who have a vested interest in the Henderson case being dismissed. People who are willing to go to extraordinary lengths to ensure Martin Henderson walks free." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "You're part of this? You're involved in kidnapping my daughter?" "No." Brennan's expression was genuinely pained. "I'm not part of the kidnapping. I'm here to offer you a way out, a way to save Emma and end this nightmare. By dismissing the case. By recognizing that the case against Martin Henderson was built on illegally obtained evidence, that's all. Just acknowledge what we both know is true. The FBI overstepped in their investigation. Warrants were granted based on insufficient probable cause. The entire prosecution is fruit of the poisonous tree." Sarah wanted to laugh at the absurdity. The evidence was legally obtained. Every warrant was properly vetted. The chain of custody is impeccable. You know that. I know that. This argument was already rejected in pretrial motions. Then file a reconsideration. Judges change their minds all the time based on new analysis of the law. I won't be blackmailed into subverting justice. Brennan's friendly demeanor cracked slightly. Your Honor, please understand the position you're in. The people behind this, they're not just interested in freeing Martin Henderson. They represent a network of corruption that spans law enforcement, the judiciary, pharmaceutical companies, and political offices at the highest levels. They have resources you can't imagine. They have reach you can't escape. Then why come to me yourself? Why not just let your terrorist friends execute their plan? Because I'm trying to give you a third option. Brennan pulled out his phone and showed Sarah a video. It showed Emma, clearly terrified, being dragged through prison corridors. The timestamp read 10:24 a.m., 23 minutes ago. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Seeing Emma in danger, seeing the fear on her daughter's face, made everything suddenly, viscerally real in a way that phone calls and threats hadn't. She's currently being held in the death row corridor, Brennan continued quietly. In approximately 1 hour, there's going to be what appears to be a catastrophic system failure. Cell doors will open, security cameras will malfunction, and 12 men who have nothing left to lose will have access to your daughter. You're describing murder, premeditated murder of a child. I'm describing what will happen if you don't cooperate. But it doesn't have to go that way. Dismiss the case in the next hour, and Emma walks out of Ironwood unharmed. The hostage situation resolves peacefully. Everyone goes home. Sarah stood, her chair scraping against the floor. Get out of my office. Your Honor. Get out before I have you arrested for conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Brennan closed his briefcase slowly, his expression hardening. You're making a mistake. A mistake that will cost Emma her life. Martin Henderson must walk free. The people I represent have invested too much, risked too much, to let one idealistic judge stand in their way. Then they should have chosen their judge more carefully. Sarah grabbed her phone. "I'm calling security." "One more thing you should know," Brennan said as he moved toward the door. "The FBI agent who called you, Lauren Hayes, she's been on our payroll for 3 years, so if you're thinking about trusting law enforcement, think again. We told you we have people everywhere. We weren't exaggerating." He unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving Sarah alone with her terror and her impossible choice. Sarah collapsed into her chair, her mind racing. If Hayes was compromised, then the FBI couldn't be trusted, but she couldn't face this alone. She needed help, needed someone she could trust, absolutely. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 18 months. Her ex-husband, David Mitchell. David was a homicide detective with Portland Police, one of the best investigators in the state. They'd divorced 5 years ago after his job consumed their marriage, but he'd always been a devoted father to Emma. If anyone could help navigate this nightmare, it was David. He answered on the second ring. "Sarah, is everything okay?" "David, something's happened. Emma's in danger. I need you to come to my chambers immediately, and I need you to come alone. Don't tell anyone at the department. Don't call the FBI. Just get here now." "Sarah, what?" "Please, David, trust me. Emma's life depends on it." There was a brief pause. "I'm 10 minutes away. I'm coming." Sarah hung up and turned back to her computer. She pulled up every file related to the Henderson case, looking for something, anything, that might explain why freeing Martin Henderson was worth this level of criminality. Prometheus Pharmaceuticals had been worth $3 billion before the cardiozine scandal. After the fraud was exposed, the stock collapsed. The company declared bankruptcy. Henderson himself had lost everything: his fortune, his reputation, his freedom. But someone still thought he was valuable enough to orchestrate a prison kidnapping. Sarah dug deeper, accessing sealed documents that detailed the investigation's findings. The FBI had discovered that cardiozine's approval process had been fast-tracked by 3 specific FDA officials. All 3 had received significant consulting fees from shell companies linked to Henderson. But there was something else in the files. A name that had been redacted in most documents but appeared once, unedited, in an internal FBI memo: Project Chimera. Sarah searched for references to Project Chimera in the case files. Nothing. She expanded her search to the courthouse database, looking for any case that mentioned the term. Still nothing. Her office door opened again. This time it was David, moving quickly, his detective's shield still clipped to his belt. At 45, he was graying at the temples but still fit, still carrying himself with the alert posture of someone who'd spent decades walking into dangerous situations. "Talk to me," he said without preamble. "What's going on with Emma?" Sarah told him everything. The phone call last night, the threat, the kidnapping at Ironwood, Brennan's visit. By the time she finished, David's face had gone white. "Jesus Christ, Sarah, you should have called me immediately. As soon as you got that first threat, I didn't know who to trust. They said they have people everywhere. The FBI agent who called me this morning, she might be compromised." David pulled out his phone. "I'm calling this in. We need SWAT, hostage negotiators." "No." Sarah grabbed his arm. "David, listen to me. If we alert the wrong people, they'll kill Emma. They've made that clear. We need to think this through." "There's nothing to think through. Our daughter is being held hostage by terrorists inside a state prison. This requires a tactical response." "And what if the tactical response team is compromised? What if the hostage negotiators are on their payroll? We don't know how deep this corruption goes." David ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "So what's your plan? Wait until noon and dismiss a federal case based on blackmail? That's not a solution, Sarah. That's surrender." "I know." Sarah's voice broke slightly. "I know. But I can't let them kill Emma. I can't." David moved to the window, staring out at the city. "There has to be another way. We get Emma out somehow, then we deal with the Henderson case." "How?" "We don't even know exactly where in the prison she's being held. And even if we did, We can't mount a rescue without alerting people who might be working with the kidnappers. Then we need someone on the inside, someone we can trust." David turned back to her. "Do you know anyone at Ironwood? Any guards, administrators, anyone who might help us?" Sarah thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I've never had a case involving Ironwood. I don't have connections there." Her computer chimed with an email notification. Sarah glanced at the screen and felt her blood run cold. The sender was listed as a friend, and the subject line read, "Time's running out." She opened it. The email contained a single image. Emma, huddled on the floor of what looked like a prison corridor surrounded by cell doors. The timestamp on the image read, 11:03 a.m. Below the image was a message. "Your daughter is currently in Death Row Corridor D. In 54 minutes, the cell doors will open. Daniel Cross, the man in Cell 7, has offered to protect her." Interesting, isn't it? The man you helped convict is now Emma's only hope for survival. You have until noon to make your decision. Choose wisely. David looked over her shoulder at the screen. Daniel Cross? The DEA agent who went bad? That Daniel Cross? "I didn't convict him," Sarah said quietly. "That was Judge Harrison's case 2 years before mine. But I remember it. Cross murdered his partner during a drug operation. The evidence was overwhelming." "Then why would he help Emma?" "I don't know, but apparently someone thinks he will." Sarah stared at the image of her daughter, looking so small and frightened in that harsh prison corridor. In 54 minutes, 12 convicted killers would have access to her. And the only thing standing between Emma and death was a man who'd already proven himself capable of murder. The clock on her computer screen changed to 11:08 a.m. 52 minutes until the deadline. 52 minutes to save Emma's life or destroy everything Sarah Mitchell had built her career on. The lights in Death Row Corridor D flickered once, twice, then stabilized to a dim emergency setting. Emma Mitchell remained pressed against the cold concrete wall, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. The electronic locks on the cell doors had begun their disengagement sequence, a series of soft mechanical clicks that echoed through the corridor like a countdown to hell. Daniel Cross stood at the bars of his cell, his gray eyes fixed on Emma with an intensity that was both terrifying and oddly reassuring. "Listen very carefully," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos about to unfold. "When these doors open, you're going to move directly to my cell. Not Cell 6. Not Cell 8. Mine. Cell 7. Do you understand?" Emma nodded, unable to form words. Around her, she could hear the other inmates stirring, their voices rising in anticipation. Crude laughter. Threats shouted from cell to cell. The sound of men who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain from violence. "Why should I trust you?" Emma finally managed to ask. "You're a murderer. You killed a federal agent." Something flickered across Daniel's face. Pain, maybe, or regret. "I know what you've been told about me. I know what the evidence showed, but right now the truth doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm the only person in this corridor who wants to keep you alive." "Why? What do you get out of protecting me?" "Maybe a chance at redemption. Or maybe I just can't stand the thought of watching another innocent person die because of the same corruption that put me here." Daniel's grip tightened on the bars. "We don't have time for my life story. Those doors are opening in about 30 seconds. When they do, you move. Fast." The first lock disengaged with a loud clang. Cell door number 1 swung open. A massive man with tattoos covering every visible inch of skin emerged, his eyes immediately finding Emma. Marcus the Bull Reeves, serving death row for murdering 3 people during a home invasion. His smile revealed several missing teeth. Well, Reeves growled. "Christmas came early this year." Daniel's voice cut through the corridor like a whip. "She's under my protection, Marcus. Pass the word. Anyone who touches her deals with me." Reeves laughed, a sound like grinding gravel. "Your protection, Cross? You're scheduled for execution in 3 days. What are you gonna do, die at me?" Another door opened, then another. Within seconds, all 12 cells stood open. 11 condemned men stepped into the corridor, forming a loose semicircle around Emma. Only Daniel remained in his cell doorway, blocking the entrance. "Last warning," Daniel said quietly. "Walk away." Or what? This came from Raymond Torres, a wiry man in his 40s with cold, dead eyes, former hitman for the Sinaloa cartel, 27 confirmed kills. "There are 11 of us and one of you. The math doesn't work in your favor, hero." Emma wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The corridor was a dead end, sealed doors at both ends. She was trapped with 12 killers, and the only thing between her and them was a man she had no reason to trust. Daniel stepped fully out of his cell, moving to stand directly in front of Emma. Despite years of incarceration, he moved with the fluid confidence of someone who'd received extensive combat training. Emma noticed scars on his knuckles, the kind that came from repeated fighting. "The math works fine," Daniel said, "because I'm the only one here who has nothing to lose and no reason to hold back. I'm dead in 3 days anyway, which means I can do things the rest of you won't risk. So here's how this plays. You can try to get through me to her, and maybe you will eventually, but I guarantee I'll take at least 3 of you with me. Maybe 4. Who wants to volunteer to be first?" The corridor fell silent. The condemned men exchanged glances, each one calculating odds, weighing risks. Emma realized with cold clarity that Daniel was right. He had the advantage of being already doomed. The others, despite their death sentences, still harbored hopes of appeals, of overturned convictions, of some miracle that might save them. Daniel had none of that. His execution date was set. He truly had nothing to lose. Torres broke the standoff. "This is bullshit. The guards set this up. They want us to kill the girl, make it look like a riot. We play along, we're just doing their dirty work." "So what?" Reeves countered. "The girl dies either way. Might as well have some fun first." "Fun?" Daniel's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Is that what you call it? She's 16 years old, Marcus. She's a kid." "So were 2 of the people I killed. Didn't slow me down then." Daniel moved so fast that Emma barely registered it. One moment he was standing still. The next, his fist connected with Reeves's jaw in a strike that sent the larger man stumbling backward. Reeves recovered quickly, roaring with rage, and launched himself at Daniel. What followed was brutal and efficient. Daniel fought like someone who'd been trained by professionals and refined by necessity. He used leverage instead of strength, redirected Reeves's momentum, struck at vulnerable points: throat, solar plexus, kidneys. Within 30 seconds, Reeves was on his knees, gasping for air, and Daniel had his arm locked in a position that threatened to dislocate the shoulder. "Anyone else?" Daniel asked the other inmates, barely breathing hard. Emma watched in stunned silence as the condemned men reassessed their opponent. This wasn't the typical prison fighter relying on brutality and rage. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "You're DEA," said a quiet voice from the back. An older black man named William Hayes, convicted of killing 2 police officers during a shootout 20 years ago. "Or you were. I heard stories about you. They said you were one of the best undercover agents the agency ever had. Infiltrated 3 major cartels. Made cases that put away dozens of dealers." Daniel released Reeves, who scurried back to the relative safety of the group. "That was another lifetime." "So what happened?" Hayes asked. "Why'd you kill your partner?" "I didn't." The words came out flat, emotionless. But 12 jurors thought otherwise, and here we are. Torres laughed bitterly. "So you're innocent? That's a new one. Everyone in this place is innocent, right?" "I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to walk away from the girl. She's not part of whatever game the guards are playing. She's leverage in something bigger." "Bigger how?" This from a thin man with nervous energy named Calvin Reed, serial rapist and killer. 6 victims. "What's so special about this particular girl?" Emma found her voice, surprising herself. "My mother is Judge Sarah Mitchell. She's presiding over a federal case. Someone wants her to dismiss it, so they kidnapped me to force her hand." The corridor went silent again as the implications sank in. These were career criminals. They understood leverage, blackmail, corruption. They understood the game being played. Hayes spoke again, his voice thoughtful. So if we kill you, we're helping corrupt guards cover up a federal conspiracy. We become tools in someone else's crime. That's about right, Daniel confirmed. And if we don't kill you? Hayes continued. What happens then? Then maybe Emma lives long enough for someone to figure out this mess. Maybe she becomes a witness instead of a victim. Maybe some good comes out of this nightmare. Torres spat on the ground. Since when do we care about good? We're death row, Cross. Society already decided we're beyond redemption. Maybe we are, Daniel admitted. But that doesn't mean we have to prove them right. Emma watched as something shifted in the group dynamic. Not everyone was convinced. Reeves was glaring at Daniel with murder in his eyes, and several others looked equally hostile. But Hayes's question had planted a seed of doubt. These men were killers, but they weren't mindless. They could recognize when they were being manipulated. The standoff was broken by the sudden screech of metal on metal. One of the corridor's sealed doors was being forced open from the outside. Everyone turned to look as it slowly swung inward, revealing 3 figures in correctional officer uniforms with their faces covered by ski masks. The same men who'd kidnapped Emma. The lead gunman raised his weapon, a compact submachine gun, and surveyed the scene with evident frustration. What the hell is this? Why is she still alive? Daniel stepped protectively in front of Emma. Because we're not your puppets. You want her dead? Do it yourself. Gladly. The gunman aimed at Emma. What happened next occurred in seconds that felt like hours. Daniel shoved Emma hard toward his cell just as gunfire erupted. Bullets sparked off the concrete walls and steel bars. The death row inmates scattered, some diving back into their cells, others pressing themselves against walls. Daniel tackled the lead gunman, driving him to the ground. The weapon skittered across the floor. Torres, moving on instinct or opportunity, grabbed it and opened fire on the other 2 masked men. One fell immediately, screaming. The other returned fire, bullets cutting through the air where Emma had been standing moments before. Emma crawled into Daniel's cell, her ears ringing from the gunfire, her body shaking uncontrollably. Through the cell door, she watched Daniel and the lead gunman fighting with desperate intensity. They rolled across the concrete, each trying to gain advantage. Daniel managed to get his hands around the man's throat, but the gunman pulled a knife from his boot and slashed at Daniel's side. Daniel grunted in pain but didn't let go. His fingers tightened around the gunman's windpipe. The man thrashed, clawed, kicked, and then, slowly, went limp. The corridor fell silent except for the ringing alarms and the groans of wounded men. Torres stood holding the submachine gun, his finger still on the trigger. The barrel trained on the surviving masked man who'd raised his hands in surrender. Daniel staggered to his feet, blood seeping through his prison uniform where the knife had cut him. He made his way back to his cell where Emma was huddled in the corner. "You okay?" he asked, his voice strained with pain. Emma could only nod. Daniel leaned against the cell wall, pressing his hand to the wound in his side. "That was closer than I'd like. You saved my life. Don't thank me yet. This isn't over." Daniel looked out at the corridor, at the bodies on the ground, at the other inmates who were slowly emerging from cover. "Hayes, check those bodies. See if they have anything useful. Torres, keep that weapon trained on the survivor. Everyone else stay calm, we need to figure out our next move." "Our next move?" Reeves snarled, nursing his jaw where Daniel had hit him. "Since when are you giving orders?" "Since I'm the only one here who's dealt with this kind of tactical situation before. Since I'm the only one who knows how these operations work." Daniel's gray eyes swept the corridor. "And since I'm apparently the only one who realizes that whoever planned this isn't going to just let it fail. They'll send more men, better armed, better prepared." Hayes returned from searching the bodies, holding up ID badges. "These aren't real correctional officers. The badges are forgeries. Good ones, but forgeries, which means this is a private operation," Daniel said. "Probably hired mercenaries, ex-military, the kind of people who don't leave loose ends." Emma's voice was small, frightened. What do we do? Daniel looked at her, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Emma saw something in his eyes that looked like genuine compassion. We survive, however we can, for as long as we can. Your mother has until noon to make her decision. That gives us, he glanced at a clock visible through the cell bars, about 35 minutes to stay alive. Torres lowered the weapon slightly. And what happens at noon? Either Judge Mitchell dismisses the case and Emma goes free, or she refuses and they send enough firepower to finish what they started. Either way, this corridor is about to become a war zone. Emma pulled her knees to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible. She thought about her mother, about the impossible choice Sarah was facing. Dismiss a case and let a criminal go free, or refuse and let her daughter die. What would her mother choose? Emma realized with cold clarity that she didn't know the answer. Sarah Mitchell was many things. A loving mother, a brilliant legal mind, a woman of principle. But she was also someone who devoted her entire life to upholding justice, to ensuring that the law meant something. Would she sacrifice that for her daughter? Would she choose Emma over everything she believed in? My mom won't dismiss the case, Emma heard herself say. The words surprised her even as she spoke them. She can't. She spent her whole career fighting corruption. She won't give in to blackmail even for me. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then we'd better prepare for company. Because if your mother doesn't cooperate, the people behind this are going to make an example of both of you. Sarah Mitchell stared at her computer screen, watching the seconds tick away. 11:27 a.m., 33 minutes until the deadline. 33 minutes to decide between justice and her daughter's life. The weight of that choice threatened to crush her. David stood at the window of her chambers, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in urgent whispers. He'd been making calls for the past 15 minutes, not to the FBI or official channels, but to contacts he trusted absolutely. Other detectives, former partners, people who owed him favors and wouldn't ask questions. When he finally hung up, his expression was grim. I've got 3 guys I trust completely who can be at Ironwood in 20 minutes. SWAT trained, good in a crisis, but Sarah, 3 men against whatever force they have inside that prison. It's not enough for a tactical rescue. Then what do you suggest? I suggest you seriously consider dismissing the Henderson case. We buy Emma's freedom, then we regroup and figure out how to nail these bastards properly. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. If I dismiss the case, Martin Henderson walks free. A man responsible for 63 deaths. A man who bribed federal officials, falsified drug trial data, and profited from people's suffering. He walks free, and the people who orchestrated this kidnapping get exactly what they want. And Emma lives. Does she? Sarah stood pacing her chambers. David, think about this. These people kidnapped a federal judge's daughter inside a maximum security prison. They have guards on their payroll, possibly FBI agents. They've shown they're willing to kill. What makes you think they'll honor their word and release Emma once they get what they want? She's a witness. She can identify people. She's a liability. David's jaw tightened. So what's your alternative? Let the deadline pass and hope for the best? My alternative is to figure out what this is really about. Why is Martin Henderson so valuable to them? What's worth this level of risk and exposure? Sarah returned to her computer and pulled up the Henderson case files again, searching for something she'd missed. The evidence against Henderson was extensive. Thousands of pages of documents, hundreds of emails, dozens of witness testimonies. But buried in that mountain of evidence had been a single reference to something called Project Chimera. She searched for it again, this time broadening her parameters to include any sealed documents, classified sections, or redacted materials. After several minutes of searching restricted databases with her judicial credentials, she found something, a heavily redacted FBI intelligence report dated 6 months before Henderson's arrest. The report's subject line read, Project Chimera, ongoing investigation into pharmaceutical industry corruption and national security implications. National security implications. That phrase made Sarah's blood run cold. This wasn't just about corporate fraud anymore. She clicked through the document, frustrated by the extensive redactions. Entire paragraphs were blacked out. Names were removed. But fragments remained, pieces of a puzzle that was far bigger than she'd realized. Project Chimera, identified as multinational conspiracy involving pharmaceutical companies, defense contractors, and foreign intelligence services. Cardiozine drug approval suspected to be preliminary test of larger program aimed at Henderson, Martin, asset of unknown foreign actor, codenamed. National security threat, if exposed, could compromise. David moved to stand behind her, reading over her shoulder. Jesus. Sarah, this isn't just about fraud. Henderson was working with foreign intelligence. Apparently. Sarah continued scrolling, finding more fragments. But working to do what? And for whom? Her phone rang. Unknown number. Sarah's hand trembled as she answered, putting it on speaker so David could hear. The distorted voice was back. Judge Mitchell, I see you're still in your chambers, still haven't filed the dismissal. Time is running short. I want proof of life, Sarah demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. I want to speak to Emma. I want confirmation she's alive and unharmed. You saw the photograph. That's all the proof you get. The photograph was taken almost half an hour ago. For all I know, Emma could be dead already. I'm not dismissing anything without speaking to my daughter. There was a pause, the sound of muffled conversation. Then, hold. The line went silent except for background noise, echoes, distant shouting, the industrial hum of ventilation systems. Then Emma's voice, frightened but alive. Mom? Relief flooded through Sarah so intensely her knees nearly buckled. Emma, sweetheart, are you hurt? I'm okay. Mom, there are men with guns and they… Emma's voice was cut off abruptly. The distorted voice returned. Satisfied? Your daughter is alive, for now. But that changes if you don't cooperate. You have 29 minutes, Judge Mitchell. File the dismissal or Emma dies. It's that simple. Nothing about this is simple. You're asking me to subvert federal justice to free a man who… We're not asking, we're telling. And let me make something very clear to you. Martin Henderson is more valuable than you can possibly understand. The people I represent have invested billions of dollars and decades of planning into operations that Henderson is critical to. Your little fraud case is an inconvenience we're removing, one way or another. What operations? What is Project Chimera? The silence on the other end was telling. Sarah had struck a nerve. You've been doing research, the voice finally said. That's unfortunate and irrelevant. Project Chimera is so far above your pay grade that even knowing the name puts you in danger. Focus on what matters, your daughter's life. Tell me what Henderson really is. Tell me why he's worth kidnapping a teenager for. Maybe then we can negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. Dismiss the case or Emma dies. Those are your only options. The line went dead. David immediately grabbed his phone again. That's it. I'm calling in every favor I have. We're getting a team to Ironwood right now, and we're getting Emma out. Wait. Sarah held up her hand, her mind racing. Something about the conversation had revealed more than the caller intended. The panic in that brief silence when she mentioned Project Chimera. The emphasis on Henderson being critical to ongoing operations. Martin Henderson wasn't just a defendant. He was an asset. Possibly an intelligence asset. Sarah pulled up a new search, this time looking for any connection between Prometheus Pharmaceuticals and defense contracts. It took several minutes of digging through corporate filings and government databases, but she found it. A subsidiary of Prometheus had received a Department of Defense contract 3 years ago for pharmaceutical research related to enhanced soldier performance. Enhanced soldier performance. That could mean anything from better pain medication to experimental cognitive enhancers to… Oh my God, Sarah whispered. What? David leaned closer. What did you find? Cardiozine wasn't a cholesterol drug. Or rather, it wasn't just a cholesterol drug. Look at this. She pulled up the drug's chemical composition from the FDA filing. The active compounds in cardiozine include elements typically found in nootropics, cognitive enhancers. And look here. These binding agents are similar to compounds used in military-grade stimulants. David frowned. I don't understand. What are you saying? I'm saying cardiozine was a cover. The public release was meant to look like a cholesterol medication that failed quality control. But what if the real purpose was something else entirely? What if the civilian version was deliberately sabotaged to hide the fact that the military version worked exactly as intended? That's a hell of a theory, Sarah. Do you have any evidence? Not yet. But it would explain why freeing Henderson is worth this much risk. If he's the key to a drug program that enhances soldier performance, makes them smarter, faster, more focused, that's a multi-billion-dollar military contract. That's geopolitical advantage. That's worth killing for. Her computer chimed with another email. This one was from an address she didn't recognize, but the subject line made her open it immediately. The truth about Daniel Cross. The email contained a single attachment, a PDF file labeled Classified DEA Internal Investigation Report. Sarah opened it, scanning quickly. What she read made her stomach turn. Daniel Cross hadn't murdered his partner. He'd been set up. The report detailed how Cross had been working deep undercover for 3 years, infiltrating a cartel that was smuggling not just drugs but something else. Pharmaceutical compounds that matched the profile of enhanced performance drugs. Cross had discovered that his own agency had been compromised, that several high-ranking DEA officials were working with the cartel to facilitate the smuggling operation. When Cross tried to report it through official channels, he was silenced. His partner, Marcus Thompson, was actually the corrupt agent. Thompson had tried to kill Cross to protect the operation, but Cross had fought back. In the struggle, Thompson died. The evidence was manufactured afterward. Cross's gun placed at the scene, DNA planted, witnesses paid to lie, an airtight case built on complete fabrication, and the prosecutor who'd pushed hardest for Cross's conviction? Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Brennan, Thomas Brennan's son. David, Sarah said slowly, I think I just figured out why Emma was taken to death row, why she was placed specifically near Daniel Cross. The DEA agent who killed his partner? The DEA agent who was framed by the same people who are trying to free Martin Henderson. The agent who discovered Project Chimera 3 years ago and was silenced before he could expose it. David's eyes widened. You think Cross knows what Henderson is really involved in? I think Cross is the only living person outside this conspiracy who knows the full truth. And I think whoever sent this email wants me to understand that Cross might be our only ally inside Ironwood. But who sent it? And why? Before Sarah could answer, her office phone rang. Her direct line, the number known only to court staff and other judges. She answered cautiously. Judge Mitchell. Your Honor, this is Deputy Warden Patricia Holloway at Ironwood. The woman's voice was strained, frightened. I'm calling on an unsecured line because I believe our primary communications have been compromised. I need you to listen very carefully. Your daughter is alive, but she's in extreme danger. So am I. So is everyone in this facility who isn't part of this conspiracy. Deputy Warden, what's happening? Who's behind this? I don't have names, but I have information. About an hour ago, 12 men dressed as correctional officers entered this facility using authentic credentials and security codes. They took control of Death Row Corridor D, disabled cameras, and opened the cell doors. The official story is a riot in progress, but this is a planned operation. They intend to kill Emma and make it look like she died in the chaos. How did you get this information? Because one of the real correctional officers they replaced is my nephew. They knocked him out and stole his uniform, but he regained consciousness and managed to contact me. Judge Mitchell, I'm trying to organize a response, but I don't know who in my own staff I can trust. I need outside help, but I can't go through official channels without potentially alerting the people behind this. Sarah made a decision. Deputy Warden, I'm sending you a contact number. Detective David Mitchell, Portland PD Homicide. He's my ex-husband and Emma's father. He has 3 trusted men who can be at Ironwood in 15 minutes. They're not there in any official capacity, just concerned citizens helping with a security situation. Can you get them inside? If they come to the East Service entrance and identify themselves to me personally, yes. But Judge Mitchell, you need to understand something. Even if we rescue Emma, this doesn't end. The people behind this won't stop. They have too much invested. Then we need to expose them. All of them. Whatever Project Chimera is, whatever Henderson is really part of, it needs to come to light. I can help with that. A different voice on the line, male, slightly distorted as if the speaker was trying to disguise his identity. Deputy Warden Holloway, thank you for facilitating this connection. You should go now. Make arrangements for Detective Mitchell's team. Who is this? Holloway demanded. Someone who's been trying to expose this conspiracy for 3 years. Someone who's about to get a chance at redemption. Judge Mitchell, this is Daniel Cross. Sarah froze. How are you on this call? Emma is currently in my cell. One of the fake guards had a radio. I'm using it to piggyback on the prison's communication system. I don't have much time before they realize I've hacked their frequency, so listen carefully. Why should I trust you? You're a convicted murderer. Because you just read the classified report that proves I was framed. Because you're smart enough to realize that Emma's kidnapping and my frame-up are connected. Because right now, I'm the only thing standing between your daughter and 11 men who want to hurt her. Sarah's mind reeled. This was insane. She was talking to a death row inmate who claimed to be protecting her daughter while fighting off both other inmates and armed mercenaries. And yet, something about his voice, the calm authority, the intelligence, the desperate sincerity, made her believe him. What do you need from me? She asked. Don't dismiss the Henderson case. Whatever they're threatening, whatever deadline they've given you, don't cave. Henderson needs to stay in custody because he's the linchpin of this entire operation. If he walks, Project Chimera goes operational, and everything I've fought to prevent happens anyway. They'll kill Emma. They're going to try to kill Emma regardless of what you do. These people don't leave witnesses. But if you hold firm, if you refuse to be blackmailed, it buys us time. It forces them to make mistakes. It gives your ex-husband's team a chance to mount a rescue. You're asking me to gamble with my daughter's life. I'm asking you to trust that I can keep her alive long enough for help to arrive. I'm asking you to be the judge you've always been, someone who doesn't bend to corruption, no matter the personal cost. Sarah looked at David, who was listening to the conversation with an expression of disbelief and growing respect. He nodded slowly. Tell me about Project Chimera, Sarah said. Everything you know. Not over an unsecured line, but I'll tell you this. Martin Henderson created a drug that can enhance human cognitive and physical performance beyond anything previously possible. The military wants it. Foreign governments want it. Criminal organizations want it. Henderson is the only person who knows the complete formula and manufacturing process. If he goes free, he sells that knowledge to the highest bidder, and the balance of power shifts globally. And the people who framed you are the same people trying to free Henderson. DEA officials, FBI agents, federal prosecutors, all compromised, all working for whoever's bankrolling Project Chimera. I got too close to the truth, so they eliminated me, or tried to. Turns out death row is only permanent if they actually execute you. An alarm started blaring in the background of Cross's transmission. Shouts, gunfire. I have to go, Cross said urgently. They're sending reinforcements. Judge Mitchell, whatever you decide, decide fast. And Detective Mitchell, get your team to that east entrance. Deputy Warden Holloway will be waiting. We're going to need all the help we can get. The radio went dead. Sarah and David stared at each other in the sudden silence of her chambers. The clock on her computer screen read 11:44 a.m. 16 minutes until the deadline. 16 minutes to save Emma, expose Project Chimera, and stop a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government. Sarah pulled up the Henderson case file one final time. Her finger hovered over the button that would file a dismissal motion. One click and Emma might live. One click and everything she'd worked for would be destroyed. One click and Martin Henderson would walk free to sell his research to whoever paid the most. Sarah, David said quietly, whatever you decide, I support you, but you need to decide now. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of Emma. Her brilliant, stubborn, brave daughter. The girl who'd inherited Sarah's sense of justice and David's courage. What would Emma want her mother to do? The answer came clearly. Emma would want her to do the right thing, even if it cost everything. Sarah opened her eyes and moved her cursor away from the dismissal button. Instead, she began typing a different document, a formal request to the FBI director, copying the Attorney General and every major news outlet she could think of, detailing everything she knew about Project Chimera, the conspiracy to free Martin Henderson, and the kidnapping of her daughter. If she was going down, she was taking the whole corrupt system with her. "David," she said as she hit send, "get your team to Ironwood. Now. Because we're about to start a war." The explosion of gunfire in Death Row Corridor D was deafening. Daniel Cross pushed Emma behind the steel frame of his cell bunk as bullets ricocheted off concrete and metal, sending sparks flying through the dim emergency lighting. 6 armed men in tactical gear had breached both ends of the corridor simultaneously, trapping everyone inside in a devastating crossfire. "Stay down," Daniel shouted over the chaos. He grabbed the submachine gun Torres had dropped when the first shots rang out, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. Half empty. Maybe 20 rounds left. Not nearly enough. Through the smoke and confusion, Daniel could see the other death row inmates scrambling for cover. Hayes had pulled Calvin Reed into cell 3. Torres and 2 others had barricaded themselves in cell 9. Reeves was down, blood pooling beneath him. Whether dead or wounded, Daniel couldn't tell. The tactical team advanced methodically, professionally. These weren't prison guards or hired thugs. These were military contractors, probably ex-special forces, equipped with body armor and night vision capabilities. The kind of people who didn't miss and didn't leave survivors. Daniel's mind raced through tactical options. The corridor was a fatal funnel, nowhere to run, limited cover, enemies on both sides. In military terms, they were completely screwed. But Daniel hadn't survived 3 years deep undercover in cartel territory by accepting impossible situations. There was always a play, always an angle. "Emma," he said, keeping his voice calm despite the bullets chewing up the walls around them. "Under my bunk, there's a loose panel in the floor. I've been working on it for 8 months. It leads to a maintenance crawl space. Can you fit through it?" Emma's eyes were wide with terror, but she nodded. Her hands shook as she crawled under the bunk and felt along the concrete floor. After a moment, she found it, a section of floor that shifted when she pushed. "I found it." "Good. When I say go, you drop through, and you crawl as fast as you can toward the east side of the building. Don't stop. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. There should be a vertical shaft about 50 feet in. Climb down and find the service tunnels, you understand? I'm not leaving you here." A grenade bounced into the corridor, spinning across the concrete floor. Daniel's combat instincts took over instantly. He kicked it hard, sending it skittering back toward the tactical team. It detonated with a thunderous blast that shook the entire corridor. Screams, shouts. One of the tactical team was down, his body armor shredded by his own grenade. "You don't have a choice," Daniel said grimly. "I can hold them here, buy you time, but only if you move. Now." Emma hesitated for one heartbreaking second, then dropped through the opening. Daniel heard her scrambling away through the crawl space, the sound quickly fading. He shoved the panel back into place and stood, checking his ammunition. 18 rounds, against 5 remaining contractors with full tactical loadouts. The math didn't work, but math rarely did in combat. Daniel stepped out of his cell, weapon raised. "Hayes, Torres, anyone still alive?" "Here," Hayes called from cell 3. "Reed's hit but breathing. What's the play?" "We make them work for it. Spread out, use the cells as cover, make them come to us." "Cross, we're dead men anyway," Torres shouted back. "Why are we fighting for the judge's kid?" "Because screw these guys, that's why." This came from a voice Daniel hadn't expected. Marcus Reeves, struggling to his feet despite the blood streaming from a shoulder wound. "They think they can just walk in here and clean house? Think they can use us as disposable tools? I've done a lot of evil in my life, but I'll be damned if I go out doing their dirty work." Something shifted in the corridor. The condemned men, killers, rapists, the worst society had to offer, were making a choice. Not redemption exactly, more like defiance. A last stand against the people trying to use them as pawns. "All right then," Daniel said. "Let's give them hell." The tactical team advanced again, more cautiously now after losing one of their own. They moved with covering fire, professional leapfrog tactics that should have overwhelmed the poorly armed inmates quickly. Should have. Daniel had spent 3 years learning how cartels fought. Brutal, unconventional, using every advantage of terrain and surprise. He called out positions, coordinated the defense, turned the corridor into a nightmare of crossfire and ambush points. When the tactical team tried to push through Cell 4, Hayes was waiting with a makeshift spear created from a bunk leg. When they attempted to breach Cell 7, Torres threw a mattress soaked in cleaning chemicals that someone had been hoarding, then ignited it with sparks from damaged electrical wiring. The corridor became an inferno of smoke, flames, and violence. But there were too many contractors and too few defenders. One by one, the inmates fell. Reed took a burst of gunfire to the chest. Torres went down fighting, his improvised weapons no match for body armor and superior firepower. Hayes made a last desperate charge and was cut down in seconds. Daniel found himself alone, his back against the wall of his cell, the submachine gun clicking empty. 3 contractors remained, advancing on his position with weapons raised. "Daniel Cross," the lead contractor said, his voice muffled by his tactical mask. "We've been authorized to offer you a deal. You tell us where the girl went and we make your execution quick and painless. You refuse and we take our time. Your choice." Daniel smiled, tasting blood from where a bullet had grazed his cheek. "Here's my counteroffer, go to hell." The contractor raised his weapon. The east service door exploded inward in a breach charge that sent metal and debris flying through the corridor. Through the smoke came David Mitchell and 3 men in civilian clothes carrying police-issue weapons, moving with the precision of trained SWAT operators. "Portland PD," David shouted, though this was anything but an official police operation. "Drop your weapons." The contractors spun to face this new threat, and in that moment of distraction, Daniel lunged. He tackled the nearest contractor, wrestling the man's rifle away and using it to club him across the helmet. The contractor went down hard. David and his team engaged the other 2 contractors in close-quarters combat. It was brutal, efficient, over in seconds. When the smoke cleared, all 3 contractors were down, disarmed and zip-tied. David rushed to Daniel, who was slumped against the wall, bleeding from multiple wounds. "Where's Emma?" "Crawl space, east side. She should be in the service tunnels by now." Daniel coughed, red flecking his lips. "You need to find her fast. There might be more contractors in those tunnels." "My guys are on it." David keyed his radio. "Teams 2 and 3 converge on the east service tunnels. We're looking for a 16-year-old girl, blonde hair, 5'6". She's the priority. Anything that's not her and not friendly, you put down." He turned back to Daniel. "You saved my daughter's life. Why? You don't even know her." "Because someone should have saved mine when I needed it." Daniel's breathing was labored. "Because I was tired of being what they made me. Because maybe at the end a man gets to choose what his last act means." Deputy Warden Holloway appeared in the doorway, accompanied by correctional officers David had vetted as clean. She took in the carnage, the bodies of inmates and contractors alike, the bullet-scarred walls, the smoke and blood and destruction. "My God," she whispered, "this is a war zone." "It was," David agreed. "But we need to secure this facility now. Lock down every entrance. Nobody gets in or out without your personal authorization. And we need medical teams." His radio crackled. "Detective Mitchell, this is Team 2. We found her. Repeat, we have Emma. She's scared but unharmed. Bringing her topside now." David's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Copy that. Bring her to the east entrance. I'm on my way." He looked down at Daniel, who had closed his eyes, a strange peace on his face despite his wounds. "Cross, stay with me. You're getting medical attention. You're going to survive this. Doesn't matter. Execution's in 72 hours anyway." Not anymore. Judge Mitchell just sent evidence of your frame-up to every news outlet in the country. By tomorrow morning, your case will be front-page news. You're getting a retrial. A real one this time. Daniel's eyes opened, something like hope flickering in them for the first time in years. Sarah Mitchell did that. She burned down the entire conspiracy to save you and Emma both. Henderson's being moved to solitary federal lockup. Every official connected to Project Chimera is being investigated. The Attorney General himself is taking over the case. David stood, offering his hand to Daniel. Come on, let's get you out of here. You've got a life to reclaim.